The Mandalorian and Grogu was just dealt a massive blow that has me really pessimistic about the immediate future of the franchise, but there is one major thing that folks are missing that does lessen the blow a bit when it comes to this major second weekend box office drop. Hey everybody, Colton here, and it's no secret that I had issues with The Mandalorian and Grogu, but I overall enjoyed the movie and felt that this could be a film that would appeal to families and have a better than expected run at the box office from generally positive word of mouth. I thought it was possible that with the opening weekend numbers being $82 million domestic, or $98 million total if you include Memorial Day, I thought we could see, I don't know, maybe like a 50% drop for the second weekend. And was that optimistic? Sure, but dear God, I did not anticipate this big of a drop. And when we talk about a second weekend drop, we are talking about the percent difference between the opening weekend box office and the second weekend box office. Now, what's considered a generally healthy drop is different for every film, but generally speaking, a 50% drop off is considered relatively healthy. What was the second weekend drop off for Mandalorian and Grogu? 69.4%. And guys, they didn't even come in second place for the second weekend. It came in third. Of course, Backrooms beat it and came in first place, with this being its opening weekend and people being very buzzed about that film. But guys, Obsession in its third weekend, another horror film, it beat Mandalorian and Grogu. And I want to be clear, that statistic says just as much or more about how impressive Obsession's box office run has been. In fact, we've seen that film not have drop-offs, but in fact, climbs. But what this really does is shine a massive spotlight on just how uninterested people are in Star Wars right now. A week or so ago, I was on a Screen Crush livestream where I said that The Mandalorian and Grogu might actually have a better second weekend than we expected because it didn't have any direct competition, plus Backrooms was the only big movie opening in Mando's second weekend, and an R-rated Backrooms film isn't exactly targeting the same audience at mass. That family audience that The Mandalorian and Grogu is targeting, that kid audience, Backrooms wasn't going to be a threat to that audience that Mando and Grogu really needed to get. Granted, I did take my 6-year-old nephew to see Backrooms this weekend because he wanted to see that more than Mando and Grogu, but I digress. Most 6-year-olds aren't going to Backrooms, so it's not that Mando and Grogu was greatly hurt by the popularity of Backrooms and even Obsession. It was really hurt by the fact that people just aren't that interested in this movie. That is the only explainer for this big of a drop-off. I mean, if Masters of the Universe had come out in this movie's second weekend, then we would be having a very different discussion, but that's not the case. Now, there is one thing that we kind of touched on at the start of the video, but we kind of blew past, and that is a thing that could account for roughly 19% of this 69% drop. That being the Monday holiday that everyone had off from school and work, that 4-day weekend. Mando and Grogu made $16 million domestically on that Memorial Day. Had that $16 million worth of tickets not been bought on that Monday and were instead bought in the second weekend, bringing that $24.5 million second weekend up to a $40 to $41 million second weekend, then we would be looking at that 50% drop that I had hoped for the second weekend to have, and not this horrible 69% drop. But that calculation comes with a big assumption. That assumption being that everyone who did go out to see Mando and Grogu on that Memorial Day, we're assuming that had they not seen it on Memorial Day, that they would have seen it on the following weekend. But the fact of the matter is that all the people that went and saw it on Memorial Day, had they not seen it on Memorial Day, they may have just not gone to see it at all. And many of the people that saw it on Memorial Day, had they not seen it Memorial Day, many of those viewers would have made time to go see it the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday before, which could have made this drop-off percentage even worse. This is concerning. It is, because the whole purpose of doing this movie was supposed to be, hey, here's some easy to swallow Star Wars with cute baby Yoda guy and Boba Fett looking bounty hunter dude that this will get everyone excited to go see a Star Wars again, right? This was supposed to be the summer movie. That was the idea behind it. Bob Iger, he came in and said, we need a big win back at the movies for Star Wars. And the assumption was that their golden goose was Grogu and that this was the direction they needed to go. But holy hell, did no one care. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Grogu character. I've long thought that come episode 10, 11, and 12, they should really have Grogu be in those movies. And I thought that his presence could help those movies box office-wise. But now, I don't know. I don't know what to think. I mean, I think merchandising sales indicate that there is a large fan base for Grogu, both the kid demographic as well as the female demographic. And then, of course, us. So I'm not saying that Grogu was the problem. In fact, Grogu could be the reason that this movie even made what it did. It could have been primed to make way less had he not been in it. But anyway, guys, we're at a very concerning moment in the history of Star Wars. And while, of course, the franchise isn't dead, it will be back. Episode 10, in all likelihood, will make $1 billion or more if they market it right. And if Star Wars is hopefully in a better place by then, not dead, but just like in a... Hopefully, Star Wars Starfighter will get Star Wars into a better place perceptually, but this is certainly disappointing news, and I'm scared for what it means, not necessarily for the future of Star Wars, but I am scared for what it means for the future of these characters. Are we never going to get a sequel to this movie, or even a season 4 of The Mandalorian? I hope that's not the case, because I really like these two characters. In fact, in this video, I went into detail on how these are two of the greatest Star Wars characters ever created. But they have been greatly mishandled and forced to carry water for this franchise that wasn't their water to have to carry. And had they just been responsible for their own water, their story would be in a much better place. And I really hope that, here's what I hope they do. I doubt they do a movie sequel to The Mandalorian and Grogu. And I'm doubting they do like a full-on season 4 to The Mandalorian. I think they probably just need to have The Mandalorian and Grogu when it comes to Disney Plus, which it looks like that's probably going to be a lot sooner than they had initially planned, because they're probably not going to leave it in theaters as long as they had hoped. Anyway, once that happens, if it does well on Disney Plus, which I'm sure it will, I think then you announce that you're doing a The Mandalorian and Grogu series. And maybe instead of it being like a week by week season type thing, they just kind of drop them when they do. Maybe they just drop like these hour and a half Mandalorian and Grogu adventures on Disney Plus. Maybe that's a fun thing that fans would enjoy and would keep people subscribed to Disney Plus. I don't know. I do hope that they just kind of go back to doing a traditional season of television for these characters. And I just hope, and I say this as the guy that thinks Star Wars belongs on the big screen. I think it is horrible that they have turned Star Wars into a television franchise when it was like the greatest film franchise of all time. But out of all of the, things that they have put on the small screen that I wish had been on the big screen, Kenobi, The Mandalorian and Grogu is one that, they were created for the small screen. They work well on the small screen. Their adventures, their story, it works in that TV format. So anyway, not a fun report, not a happy report, not because I give a shit if Disney gets their big payday, but because I love Star Wars and I love these characters. And I thought this movie was actually okay or even good. But when it bombs this hard, Lucasfilm and Disney, they will react. They will learn a lesson. I just hope to God it's the right lesson. Lucasfilm in this Disney era, an era that I've mostly enjoyed, I've certainly had my complaints, they have been very, very reactionary, and not in a good way. For example, they let the poor box office results of Solo push the Kenobi movie into being a half-baked, underwhelming streaming series instead of the big screen epic that it should have been. All because they were reactionary and thought audiences didn't want standalone movies about individual characters from the past. But what they didn't understand was that in Solo's case, you were bringing in a brand new actor to play a role that was just played by the original actor who had owned the role for like nearly half a fucking century and who we just saw get killed off like a few years prior. Whereas Kenobi, that was an actor, two actors, actually from Saga Films, returning to their roles for the rematch of the Don't get me started on Kenobi. My point is, Lucasfilm, Disney, they're reactionary and usually in the wrong direction. And one of my biggest issues with the Mandalorian series as it continued, especially into season 3, is that I think Dave Filoni, God love him, he got too involved and he made it too much of a companion series to like the Clone Wars and Rebels instead of just letting it be its own show, which is what Favreau pitched it as to begin with. And then, Kathleen Kennedy was like, I want you to work with Filoni on this. You guys get together on that. And I'm not, dissing Filoni, but I think this show may have been better had it just been Favreau's original vision. But I don't want to give too much credit to Favreau because he did this movie. He did season 3. Not great. So anyway, back on Filoni. Filoni, he is the co-CEO of Lucasfilm now. So I don't know what lessons, if any, he will learn, but you can only hope it's a good one, right? So yeah, there are my thoughts on this unfortunate report. Let me know your thoughts on it down in the comments below. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. I've been Colton Ogburn. I'll see you next time. Bye!